next movie I saw was one that I was anticipating for probably the wrong reason, but it ended up still being kind of the right reason at the same time. It's a movie called Prince Avalanche. It's a movie directed by David Gordon Green. You would recognize his name because he did Pineapple Express, as well as Eastbound and Down, as well as Your Highness. He was involved in that. But before all that, he was a very well-known independent director. About the early 2000s, he did a movie called George Washington that was really solid. Another one, All the Real Girls, I believe is what it's called. Undertow, he did that one, and another movie called Snow Angels, all that I'm very familiar with. All very solid movies in their own rights. And so this was a movie where he just wanted to get back sort of to his roots, his independent roots. And this movie was actually filmed in secret because of that reason, because of his heavily comedic involvement in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So he actually shot this movie in Texas near Austin using an all sort of Austin crew. I might be getting this confused with another one, but I'm pretty sure it was definitely in Texas. It was set in Texas, that's for sure. It's actually set in 1988, Texas, where the previous year there were some wildfires. This is all based on historical sort of context. It's a narrative, but it's got some historical stuff in it, where like 43,000 acres of land were burned down and basically just devastated this area of Texas. And the movie stars Paul Rudd and Emile Hirsch, as well as two other bit players. But for the most part, you spend most of the movie with Paul Rudd and Emile Hirsch. Rudd plays a character called Alvin, who is a little bit older, probably early 20s. Of course, Paul Rudd's not young, but he totally pulls this off.
Yeah.
Totally pulls it off. Emile Hirsch plays Lance, who happens to be Alvin's girlfriend's brother, who's a little bit younger. Lance is a little insecure, young. So with that, he's very, there's no other word for it. He's very horny.
Okay.
He's just like, he thinks he has this perfect plan to get laid every weekend.
Okay.
And then that doesn't sort of come to fruition, we'll say.
Yeah.
And this movie is dramatic, but also plays the comedy aspect of it. So, you're used to seeing Paul Rudd in these very sort of like, I'm 40 and I'm, like growing up, but I'm very, comedic, haha. This is a very serious role for him. I was blown away by Paul Rudd in this movie, and Emile Hirsch is just as good. So essentially the plot is that these guys, this fire, goes through this area and essentially like melts the paint off of this asphalt. So they're hired to repaint the lines on the county highway.
Okay.
And they get hired to do this by themselves in the middle of nowhere for like just months, like a whole summer, I think is what it is. And they're just by themselves. And so what are you going to do? You're by yourself with somebody that's not necessarily a stranger, but you got to sleep with the guy, you got to eat with the guy, you got to go fishing to catch your own food. You barely ever see anybody if not, there's a sort of a bit player who plays a truck driver who sort of stops by every now and then and is like crazy and old and drinks heavily. And it's a very weird subplot, but it works. So it's like, what do you do in this situation? Like, they're a little bit different, Paul Rudd's a little bit more serious. Emile Hirsch is just young and naive and is just like got this idea that like, he's going to essentially his whole agenda is getting laid. Like that's all he obsesses about. He's bored all the time. He's doing this work just because, his sister, hooked him up with this job via her boyfriend. And it just sort of, it's this revolving wheel over and over and over. But there's, these really interesting parts where they have an equal time agreement. So like they're listening to this boombox and Paul Rudd's trying to learn like German,
okay,
I think, or French or something like that. So he's got this tape and it's just on loop over and over and over and over. And of course that's driving Lance just insane. So Lance like takes it out and puts like a heavy metal tape in there. And it's like that, of course, Alvin doesn't like that. And it's just like this back and forthness. But as the movie goes on, you really sort of, it examines one's sort of self as it not being an easy thing. Like perception is everything to other people, but really when it comes down to it, when you look at yourself, it sucks. Like especially at that time in your life, there's a lot of weird things going on. Things aren't working out the way you want it to. This movie puts that it just nails it to a T. It's just It's brilliant. It never leaves that atmosphere. Lance's character goes, out over the weekend, has his own little adventure. We stay with Paul Rudd, and during that moment, Paul Rudd does these personal, private things, and they're just very strange, but very poetic and funny at times, and sad, and it's just really a strange movie. It reminds me of a Malick film, but with funny parts in it.
Okay,
and actually, I know that Malick has worked with David Gordon Green before as a producer, so you get that influence, which is really interesting. But it was my second favorite film at the festival.
Yeah,
and the reason why I wanted to see it was because there's a couple different people involved musically, but Explosions in the Sky was a band that sort of is Texas based, if not maybe Austin based. I'm not 100% about that. Of course, their music featured on Friday Night Lights. But I saw that as sort of like they specifically put that in the thing to make people come watch this movie, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to go see this movie. I was like, I love Explosions in the Sky.
It worked.
And I didn't even pay attention to the music at that point. I was just like so drawn in by the characters. It was actually written by him as well, the director. So this is a movie that everybody should see. Paul Rudd, if you enjoy his stuff, if you hate his stuff, he's going to completely change your opinion. It's going to either get better or much better.
Okay.
It's like there's no. If you see this movie and aren't moved by his performance, and as well as Emile Hirsch's, because Emile Hirsch does some weird, he's got some hit or miss stuff. They both completely helped knock this one out of the park. So again, Prince Avalanche. I can't explain the title. There's a little bit of an ending that I'm kind of like, I don't maybe understand what happened, but I will definitely be revisiting it, and maybe I'll be able to figure that out. But definitely one to check out.
Yeah. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.